Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, how was your day? I hope everyone is in good condition and healthy. In this video, my friend and I will discuss grade and comparison. Beforehand, let me introduce myself and my friend. My name is Denisa Resi Prestia and my friend is Wahyudini Fitratul Aini. We are from Group 8. I hope that when you watch this video, you will understand better what we explain. So, enjoy watching! Let's start with the table of contents first. As you can see on the slide in the video, in this chapter we focus on 3 sections. They are comparative and superlative grade, more and most, and the last, less and least. In the first section, I will discuss the comparative and superlative grade. For information, in this section, we will discuss 4 subchapters. Let's start it. Many adjectives inflect for the grade. They have 3 parts, which are plain, comparative, and superlative forms. This inflectional system also applies to a small number of other lexemes, most importantly certain determinatives and adverbs. For example, as you can see in the video, look the first example of adjectives. In the plain form is tall, then the comparative form becomes taller, and the superlative form becomes tallest. It is similar in determinative. The plain word is many, then the comparative form becomes more, and the superlative form is most. On the other hand, adverbs do the same. Soon becomes sooner and soonest. The inflected forms of tall and soon are regular. They are forms by general rules. For example, for the plural form, the word suffix is added by s or es, while the superlative form ends in est. The forms for many, however, are irregular. Although comparative is the standard name for just one of the forms, the semantic concept of comparison is relevant to the whole system of grade. All the differences between the forms in the columns have to do with comparison. The superlative and set comparison. In the case of the superlative, we are concerned with set comparison. In these examples, it is comparison between the members of some set with respect to their position on the scale denoted by the lexeme. One member or one subset is located at a higher position on that scale than the others. Consider such examples as the following. The first example is Max is the tallest boy in the class, and the second example is a prize will be given to whoever scores the most points. And the last example is I chose the life policy that will mature the soonest. In the first example, the comparison is between the set of boys in the class with respect to height, and Max occupies a higher position on this scale than all the others. In second example, the set is not expressed in the sentence itself, but it is implicit. It consists of those participating in some competition in which points are scored. The scale is the number of points scored. The prize will be given to the participant who ranks top on this scale. In the third example, the comparison is between a set of life insurance policies ranked by date of maturing. I chose the one that matters before all the others. Next, I will tell you about the comparative and term comparison. The comparative form, by contrast, is predominantly used in term comparison. The comparison between a primary term and secondary term as in the following example. In the first example, the sentence is Max is taller than Tom. Next, Sue scored more runs than I did. Last, this policy will mature sooner than that one. In the first example, the comparison is between Max's height and Tom's height. The sentence doesn't say how tall either of them is absolutely, but expresses the relation between them. We can describe the meaning by using variables as in algebra. For example, Max is X tall, Tom is Y tall, so X exceeds Y. This format enables us to handle the distinction between this type of term comparison and that illustrated in the example. The Ariel is taller than 100 feet. Here, the comparison is between the height of the Ariel and a specific height 100 feet. In this case, there is only one variable. The Ariel is X tall and X exceeds 100 feet. The primary term in the first example is Max is X tall, and the secondary is Tom is Y tall. In the second example, Sue scored X many runs is primary, and I scored Y many runs is secondary. In the last example, this policy matures X soon is primary, and that policy matures Y soon is secondary. The secondary term can be left unexpressed if it is recoverable from the context, as in, Tim is quite tall, but Max is taller, and that's better. Imagine this being said after you have opened a window. In the first example, we understand Max is taller than Tim, recovering Tim from the first clause. In the second example, where better is an irregular form of good, we understand that is better than it was before you opened the window. The second term is recovered from the situation.
Set comparison with comparative. Comparative grade is also used in set comparison when the set has just two members. The first member is comparative and the second member is superlative. For the example, in comparative is Kim is the taller of the two, and the superlative is Kim is the tallest of the three. The comparative form taller is inadmissible in superlative. Non-inflectional marking of grade. Comparative and superlative grade may be marked by a separate word, more or most, rather than by inflection. For the example, as you can see in the video, the adjective example, useful as plain, more useful as comparative, most useful as superlative. And the adverb example, rashly as plain, more rashly as comparative, and most rashly as superlative.
In the second section, we will discuss more and most. In this section, there are 3 sub-chapters. There are more as determinative, more as an adverb, and most. The two words more and most, they can be either inflectional form of the determinatives many, and much. Also, they can be adverbs marking non-inflectional comparatives and superlatives of adjectives and adverbs. Now, I will discuss the first subchapter, more as determinative. There are two forms, plain grade and comparative grade. As you can see in the slide on the video, in the first example, there are sentences, he didn't make many mistakes, as in plain grade, and he made more mistakes than you did, as in comparative grade. In the second example, we don't have much time in the A example as in plain grade, and we have more time than we need in B example as in comparative grade. In the last example, we have I didn't enjoy it much as in plain grade, and I enjoyed it more than last time as a comparative grade. The word more of the B examples or comparative grade here is determinative. The comparative counterpart of plain, many, and much in the corresponding in A examples. The determinative is functioning as a determiner in noun phrase structure in the first and second example, and as an adjunct of a degree in the clause in the third example. Correspondence between the grades is complicated by the fact that the plain forms much, or to a lesser extent many, are non-affirmative items. This is why negative clauses are used in the E examples or in plain form. It is not normal in present-day English to say, for example, we have much time or we enjoyed it much.
More as adverb. As you can see on the video, there are several examples. The first example are it's expensive and it's more expensive than I expected. And the second example are she behaved tactfully and she behaved more tactfully than her son. Here, more is an adverb. In the first example, it modifies the adjective expensive, as in it's more expensive than I expected. In the second example, it modifies the adverb tactfully, as in she behaved more tactfully than her son. It is marked the comparative grade. The crucial difference between the examples in this slide and the example in previous slide is that there is no much or many in the plain grade version in more and more as adverb example.
Next, I will discuss most. The same distinction applies with most. Thus, here we have an additional, non-superlative sense of the adverb in the third example, where it means extremely or very. In the first example in A, there is sentence, he didn't make many mistakes. It changes to he made the most mistakes. In the second example in A, it's expensive, and it becomes it's the most expensive of them all in B. In the last example in A, I found her helpful. In B, it becomes I found her most helpful. In the first example of B, most is a determinative or the superlative form of many. In the second example of B, it is an adverb, marking the superlative grade of expensive. In the third example of be, it is an adverb, but it isn't a marker of superlative grade. There is no explicit comparison between members of a set. Most indicates a high degree.
Less and least. The words less and least similarly belong to both the determinative and adverb classes. As determinatives, they are inflectional forms of little. As adverbs, they function as degree modifiers. These examples illustrate for the comparative. The first example, it has little value, and it has less value than he claimed. In the second example, it's expensive, and it's less expensive than expected. In the third example, she behaved tactfully, and she behaved less tactfully than her son. In here, in the first example B, the determinative less has the same function, determiner, as little in the first A example. In the second and the third example B, the degree adverb less is added as modifier to an adjective or adverb.
The determinative less. As a determinative, less is syntactically quite similar to its opposite, more, but there are also significant differences. More is the comparative form of both many and much, which occur with plural and non-count singular nouns. The opposites of many and much are few and little, and these have distinct comparative forms, fewer and less. Compare the following examples. There are two forms. In A is plural and in B is non-count singular. In the plural example, there are two sentences. They are, he's had more jobs than me and he's had fewer jobs than me. In the B example, there are also two sentences. He's had more experience than me and he's had less experience than me. Matters are complicated, however, by the fact that less, unlike little, is often used by plurals. For example, it cost less than $20. $20 is construed as a sum of money rather than a set of individual dollars. Fewer than $20 would be unusual. Next, less than 20 people attended the meeting, or fewer than 20 people attended the meeting, where we again have a numeral after than. Both forms are possible, with fewer less common and somewhat formal. And the last, he's had fewer jobs than me, or he's had less jobs than me. The determinative is followed immediately by a plural noun. This use of less is informal. It is avoided by many speakers and generally condemned by usage manuals.
The adverb less. As an adverb, less also contrasts with more. The adverb more that marks comparative grade. More marks superiority. It means a higher degree on the relevant scale, while less marks inferiority. It means a lower degree. Superiority, however, can also be marked inflectionally, whereas there is no inflection corresponding to less. So we have this pattern. As you can see in the example on the video, the first example is comparison of superiority. Kim is taller than Pat, and Kim is more energetic than Pat. In the second example is Kim is less tall than Pat, and Kim is less energetic than Pat. That's it. We think enough for our video. Hope you can enjoy and understand easily from our explanation about the topic. And the last we say, thank you and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.